All right, and I think we're live now. All right, welcome everyone to Learning Concrete 5. This is Season 2, Episode 4, I believe. And this episode, we have Corvin back from disappearing in the last episode. Hey, Corvin.
Hello.
Did you have a nice break?
Yeah. Yeah, I was at a conference and learned a lot. I really like going to conferences. I get to meet a lot of people who work on the same kind of stuff and get to learn a lot. So, yeah, it was a good break.
Nice. Sounds refreshing. All right. So in the last episode, Evan Cooper stepped in and helped me out with fixing up some of the CSS bugs from the last time Corbin was on, 2 episodes back. And we started to make some progress on the header and the navigation in the Dreamers theme that we've been working on. For those that are following along, if you go to the Slack channel, let's see, what is it called now?
Training.
Learning.
There you
What
go.
is it?
Yeah. Learning Concrete 5.
Learning Concrete 5 in the Concrete 5 Slack channel. There's a link to the blog, which also has a link to this TAL, but I've just popped a direct link in there too. That describes the theme that we're working on and what we're going to be doing. There's also a direct link in there to the original HTML theme if you want to download and follow along. And in the previous episode, I also did a quick review of how to get it all installed and get up and running, so that you can follow the same steps and learn as we go along. So this time, Corvin, you were mentioning that we might take a slightly different tact on the approach for the navigation. Is that right?
Yeah. I was watching your episode 2 weeks ago, and I know you guys decided to move out some of that content into an HTML block, and that made sense because you guys were having some trouble fitting the format that this static theme uses for AutoNav into an AutoNav template. But I think we might be able to tackle some of the issues you guys ran into. So I want to give that another swing.
That sounds good to me.
Cool. So are we ready to just jump into it?
I think so. Just a quick reminder for anyone who's following along, if you do want to ask questions or give any comments or anything, we are following along in the Learning Concrete 5 channel in Slack. It was great to have some feedback and suggestions last time, so if you have any comments, feel free to jump in and mention something. I can see Mark B is already typing something, so it looks like we got at least a couple people listening in today.
Nice. Give me a second to start streaming my screen.
Okay. I can do a little song and dance to kill some time.
Please.
Need a Concrete 5 theme song or something for intermission.
We might get something out of Gary yet.
Oh, nice.
All right. Can you see my screen? Is that working?
Not yet. I see you.
I'm not so good at all this technology stuff. There we go.
There we go.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to lock it on your screen for a bit.
Nice. All right. So call me out if I've got this a little too small. We definitely could go into presentation mode, but I'm not a big fan. So I'm going to try to just keep presentation mode off and oops, if I can figure out how to turn off. But I'm going to try to keep presentation mode off and just keep my font size big. I have an easy way to adjust it. So let me know if things look small.
Okay. It is pretty small, but
yeah,
I'll leave that up to the people in the channel because
we're not going to be using the sidebar too much here, so we should be okay. So starting out, what I'm going to do, we're using just looks like there's no setup that you guys have started with on the blocks directory. So we're just going to start by creating a new directory under our applications blocks directory. In that new directory, we'll go to presentation mode. All right. Cool. Let's see if all right, I can still open that, so that's okay. All right. So what we're going to do starting out is we're going to create a new directory that's going to contain our custom template for our AutoNav. So it's actually got to be 2 directories deep here. The first directory is going to be AutoNav, and that tells concrete5 that like there's some overrides over here that pertain to the AutoNav block. The next directory we got to make is underneath that AutoNav directory, and it's called templates.
Okay.
I'm almost certain that it's supposed to be plural and not singular, but I'm not 100% sure. So let's see if we can find something that's got a template, maybe layout. Yeah, templates. Definitely plural.
Okay.
Okay, so we've added these 2 directories, but we haven't actually added anything to like override any styles. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm just going to create a file here, and I'm going to name it the name of my template with just like underscores and stuff. So I'm going to call it, let's say, Dreamer header nav.php. Cool. So in here, we should be able to just say FUBU, save that, head back to, oops, if I can find a way to get back to my browser. Here we go. Let's maybe organize these a little bit. It should be okay. That's not what I wanted. That's exactly not what I wanted. We shouldn't have organized. Come on.
While you're working on that, Jay Steele and Mike Esparza are both mentioning that be nice to have comments enabled on the YouTube video. I believe they are enabled, but it might not just show up until the stream is finished, perhaps.
I think that's right. And I know I'm not sure how familiar folks are with YouTube comments, but
they degrade rather rapidly.
I'm not sure that I would advocate for that. I'm not sure that that's the best way that we can cultivate a like a strong discussion. So, you know, I'd advocate for just sticking with the Slack channel, and if comments are on, to turn them off. But we can see what the people demand.
I think basically the idea is that the links provided in Slack eventually get lost, but maybe we can just do a better job of editing the description after each episode to include any sort of links that were mentioned, so they stick around.
Cool. So what we got to do here first, you guys added a new, was it a stack or an area up here?
I think it was a global area.
Okay. I think you guys set it to not be editable. I might have changed that. So let me double check that really quick. Head into my terminal here. I'm going to try to make it a little, no, wrong direction.
There you go. It's almost visible. Nice. That's
a little faster. Okay. So we're going to head into our Dreamers theme directory. This is where I'm like keeping my files for this training thing. So Dreamers theme isn't actually like a theme here. If we look at the content, this is a concrete5 site, just so that everybody is kind of aware of that. If I go into public, you'll see there's actually a concrete directory and an application directory. So this isn't just the theme; it's the whole site. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git status, and I'm going to look at some of the things that I have changed. I can see I've added a file, but I've also modified some things. And I don't think that I want to have modified some things at this point. So I'm going to check that stuff out. Now, if we run git status again, we should see, okay, I've added that new file. I've apparently modified this too. Let's check that out. Cool. Sorry about that. Good little bit of training just slapped on top.
Get tips free of charge.
Okay, so what we're going to want to do in here, now that we've added a block template, there's not really any functionality in here. Ooh, our FUBU went away. FUBU. Save that. There's not really any functionality in here. It's just kind of a hard-coded string, obviously. So this is what we're going to do to kind of prove that, you know, the template's working and that we can enable it and all that. We don't want to like, I personally don't copy out the block view template into my template until after I have kind of convinced myself that everything's working properly.
Okay.
So to that end, we're going to go into our header element. in our Dreamer theme. And we're going to change this header navigation so that it allows us to edit it. In the last episode, I believe there was a suggestion from somebody in the audience to just create a global area and disable controls for it. And that works great. You just have to edit the content through the dashboard. And I don't want to do that. I want to avoid that if we can. So I'm going to remove that, head back to the browser, and I'm going to put this page into edit mode. Cool. So this is editable here. It looks like we've got some JavaScript issues in the theme, though. Oh, no. Slick is not a function. I wonder what that is. Looks like it's complaining that it's missing some of the dependencies. So it's not going to want to let us edit this, but that's okay. I'm just going to see if I can push past it. And I can.
Nice.
So I'm just going to add a basic auto nav here. Shoot, I can't change the custom template on it. So what we're going to do, ideally we will fix that JavaScript issue, and we might actually get to that in this episode if it becomes more of a hassle. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to lean on the fact that this is a global area, and we're just going to use that global area's dashboard page.
Okay.
So I can go into here to my, oops, that's not the right one. This is the logo stack. I want the global area instead. And I think that's header navigation. It's interesting that I have two.
There's two of everything, huh?
So that's not it. Oops, I didn't want to hit that button. Let's try the other one. There we go. Yeah, I'm confused by that, but I am happy to ignore for now. Cool. So now we're in the dashboard page for the global area that we're looking at. We were able to delete the old HTML block that we added last episode and replace it with this auto nav. Obviously, this auto nav only has the home page. I don't think my site here, if I, here, let me make sure my toolbar is visible.
Shouldn't be very many pages in it.
Yeah, there's no pages in my site. So it makes sense why it would just be home for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the old auto nav. I'm not sure what the best way to do this is. I recall I had a example site set up, but I don't remember what the path for that was. Maybe we can just create that again here. Let's do that. So I have Laravel Valet installed on my local machine, and this is how I manage domains. This is something that I've shown a couple times in season 2. So if you have seen this before, feel free to avert your eyes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head into the actual static directory that contains the code, the HTML version of our theme, and I'm going to apply a domain to it. So I'm going to say valet link, and I'm going to say Dreamers static. Cool. So Valet managed creating this domain for me. So I should be able to just navigate to it in my browser now if I just go to dreamerstatic.test.
Is there any way to increase the size of the browser text? Mike Sparse has mentioned it's a little difficult to read.
Sure. Cool. So now we've got this static domain that points to our static site. This isn't actually a concrete5 site. This is just the example we're working off of. The value I'm getting out of this is now I can see what the pages it's expecting to have are. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to start adding these pages just with blank content. So the first thing is about. So we're going to add a page. We're just going to give it a name, and we're going to publish it. We're being very thorough with our content. Services. My brain is apparently only able to hold one of these at a time. pages and contact us.
Could you increase the font on that tab as well?
Cool. So we've added all the pages, at least the top level ones that they have here. There's a couple in the list that have sub pages. So we'll get those added too. Starting with blog. Looks like it's just basic stuff. So we're just going to say post 1. And we're going to say post 2. Then there's stuff under pages. I guess we should just be complete. What is it? We have project, apartments, and element. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Project, apartments, elements.
Cool. All right. So now we have our actual site set up to match what they have in this demo template. We likely won't use all these pages, and we've got our own business requirements, and if we release this theme to other folks, they'll have completely different business requirements. So it's always good to make sure that these things are flexible. It's just helpful to start with as close to an example of what they're showing us here, so that we can try to get it as close as we can.
Mm-hmm.
So if we head back to our stacks or our global area for our header navigation now and refresh, what we'll see is that instead of just seeing home, hopefully we will see all of them. Yeah.
Nice.
But still only at the top level. So we're going to want to change the block to show at the top level, at the second. We'll want it at the top level. We'll say relevant subpage. Here we go. That's what we want. Or relevant subpages, display subpages to current. That sounds right. Didn't refresh. Doesn't look right yet.
Is there something you need to do to make them relevant? What does that actually mean, relevant?
I'm not sure.
A tab or?
It looks like this didn't actually save. So let's set
I
that to display sub plus current. Still the relevant subpages. Display subpages to current +1. Save. We'll have to figure this out.
The preview should update as you change the settings, yeah?
Yeah, it definitely should. Display links that may require login. Maybe that's the issue. No? Second level? Nope.
Well, so it's not able to access those second level ones for some reason.
Let's just see what happens if we display all. Well,
there you go.
I'm not sure that that's what we want. Well, let's say display all, display relevant. Still not. Let's just do display all and display all for now. I'd like to figure out what the deal with that is. That seems confusing. So maybe somebody open a Git issue.
You think that might be a core bug, or?
Well, I think
you mean with the theme itself?
At the very least, I think that could be less confusing.
Mm-hmm.
The terminology on there is like, it makes sense. It's just, I'm not exactly sure what those values should be set to and like what the intent of them is. Like the whole display subpages to current +1.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense kind of in a vacuum, but like what is current?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what current is, so I think that's maybe part of our issue. But at this point, we don't actually have any private subpages, so this is not a problem at all. So we're just going to save that and pretend like it is fine. So now what we have to do is we have to try to apply our custom template. You'll remember we just made the file. We didn't actually tell concrete5 about it beyond that, but we do have it available, Dreamer header nav, because concrete5's available, or it's able to see that file has been created as long as some certain caching is turned off, which it should be in development. These things will come up right away.
This is the convention over configuration approach, yeah?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, implicit stuff instead of explicit.
Okay.
Cool. So we've applied our design, and you'll see we get that just basic Fubu stream. So this is exactly what we were hoping for. Let's just publish it and head back to the website. Cool.
Nice. Fubu.
So cool. All right. So we've created our custom template, and we've just given it some kind of basic text. We haven't really given it anything obviously valuable. Nobody's going to click through to Fubu. I'm not selling any of that stuff yet. So what we're going to do instead of just having Fubu in there is we're going to go into the core, and we're going to copy out the view of the AutoNav. So we're going to go to blocks, AutoNav, view.php. So in here, this is just how the core renders AutoNav, and there's a whole bunch of inline comments in this file. All these comments are just there to facilitate somebody overriding this and understanding how to, replace some of the functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the whole of it, and we're going to move that out to our custom template. Bye, Fubu. Okay, so we've got that saved.
So now it should look exactly the same as before, right?
Hopefully, yeah. Okay. So this is actually what we're hoping for. A little counterintuitive, but this is what we're hoping for. So what we've got here is we've got an unordered list that's set to display listed kind of flatly. So it's not actually listing vertically. And then for subpages, we have these sub ULs, the sub unordered lists that are set to list vertically. So this looks like what we should have. What we need to do now, though, is we need to go in and replace the actual, rendered output so that it matches what the theme is looking for. So I know part of the issue that you guys ran into was that when you hover over these navs and get some kind of sub items, it's not an unordered list. It's a div.
Yeah.
So, that's confusing. Right now, we kind of have a linear list of nav items, and we're looping over them. And if something has child items, we just kind of wrap those child items in an unordered list kind of willy-nilly. So we're going to want to give that a little bit more structure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. It's just kind of blocking us from seeing everything. So I'm going to get rid of that stuff. So here's where we're actually doing our looping. So you can see here, NI has submenu. What it's saying is for each of the items that the AutoNav serves to our template, we're going to list out a list item for it. And we've already wrapped the whole thing with a UL. So when we output those list items, they'll just be in that UL. So once we run into a navigation item that has some kind of sub items, if it has children, we just add a UL tag to the stack. So, by doing that, what we end up doing is we end up adding a UL element underneath this LI element, for the sub nav items to render underneath. So the only way that this is set to have sub ULs is in these two little bits of code here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to turn these suckers to divs.
Well, before you do that, we actually found that the CSS and JavaScript in the theme will work on an sub unordered list. It's not dependent on the actual tags.
Just needs the right class names or something.
Yeah, we found that because it's not really semantic to have a div as a sublist like that. I mean, it's
maybe, I don't know. If the concern is like, oh, we don't want to read through the HTML and not know where the nav's at, I would argue we should just wrap the whole thing in a nav tag. The UL at this point isn't really semantic, it's just structural. Like we're totally removing all of the list style types. Like we're just listing them horizontally. So effectively, there's no difference between using a div and using a UL. I would rather, just keep this, more standard and have it be ULs.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like following this track of having something that's a little non-standard. So even though it sounds like we would just be able to do this by applying the right classes to the ULs and maybe doing some tweaks to the SCSS if we have to. I'd like to continue just with the divs just to demonstrate how we would do this if you're kind of forced to.
Okay.
Cool. So now that we have that div, we're going to head back to our browser and refresh here. So what we should see is, the format of this changes. And the reason why is because now we've got a div, or we've got our stack is a UL at the top level, then an LI, and then underneath that a div, and then within that div, there's more LIs. And so the browser is really confused because, we've got LIs inside of a div, deeply inside of a UL. So it's trying to render this in an interesting way. But it's okay because all we really care about is that now instead of having UL subnavs, we have div subnavs. Now, what's interesting here is I'm seeing that the post 1 and post 2 aren't being rendered inside the div. I bet you that's because Chrome is trying to do some fancy stuff and clean up our HTML. So let's view source and triple check this. So we're going to find blog. This is probably too small. We're going to find the word blog. Here it is. Yeah, and we can see div, and then directly underneath that is an LI. So we know for a fact that our LIs are rendering properly. It's just confused because we've got LIs underneath a div. So, all right. So what can we do to make it so that we're not rendering LIs when we need to be rendering, something that'll work underneath this div? The simplest way is to kind of abstract the concept of having this LI a little bit. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to extract this to a variable. So we're going to say dot tag name. And then we're going to make this tag name depend on whether the NI is in a depth of more than 0 or not. So you can see down here, we're doing string repeat based on the subdepth of the navigation item. So if this subdepth is 0, you won't end up with this /div. So that's how I'm guessing that the subdepth at top level is 0. So we're going to say tag name equals NI subdepth equals 0. Then our tag name is going to be LI. Otherwise, our tag name is just going to be div. Actually, let's make that a span for now, just so that it's separated from the rest of our stuff. And let's add some comments so that this is easy to understand later. Apply a different tag name to list items that are deeper than top level. Cool. Sweet. So that should be all we need to change the output here so that instead of having this, we can probably clean this up a little bit too. Let's add some new lines in here so that we can read this a little better. Cool. Now if we head back to the browser, those new lines should split this stuff up a little better. And they do, but not quite great. So we have our opening div here, and then we've got LIs. So something didn't go right. Let's figure out what's going on. My favorite way to get to the bottom of these kinds of logical looping, confusing things is to use step-through debugging. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to turn my browser to debug. And since I've got Xdebug enabled, I can set my, I'm not sure, maybe I can do it with, I can set PHP Storm to listen. There we go. Is that right?
Looks right. Preferences debug.
I need to get out of presentation mode, apparently. Oh, okay. So we were already listening. Apparently, we're already stopped a couple times. So we were already listening. So I did have that option in presentation mode. Let's head back there. I did have the option in presentation mode. It was just stop listening instead of start, right? Yeah, stop listening.
Mm-hmm.
So we're listening already. What we want to do is we want to throw a breakpoint in a spot that's going to help us understand what's going on with this subdepth. So I'm just going to do that right here where we're actually doing the business of, oh no, I do have to exit. Oh no, okay. We can add the breakpoint over here. It's just oddly way out to the right. But so I've added a breakpoint to this line, and you'll see that PHP Storm highlights it in red. That's just to tell me two things. Firstly, there's a breakpoint here, and this breakpoint might be triggered if I'm debugging at some point. And then secondly, the fact that it's red tells me that it's not currently broken there. So, so with this breakpoint added, we should be able to just go back to the browser and with our debug mode on, refresh. So let's do that. Cool. So what happened here is when I refreshed, PHP Storm realized that there was a breakpoint that needed to be broken on. So it paused it told the PHP process to pause. I'm not familiar entirely on the depth of this stuff, but somehow it lets PHP know that it needs to stop on this line. PHP stops here, and my computer just kind of automatically switched me back to PHP Storm to make it obvious that that this had broken. That's really valuable because if not, my page is just sitting here hanging, waiting for my PHP to be done rendering. So if I were just looking at my browser and not really sure, like I wasn't aware that I had my debugging on and it was stopping at a breakpoint, this will just hang forever until PHP FPM decides to kill it. So if you ever see that kind of thing and you're using step 3 debugging, maybe check that you're not broken.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now we've got our navigation item here. You can see that when we're actually stopped at a breakpoint, PHP Storm will add these kinds of metadata bits of information to lines that are using variables. So you can see we're using this nav items variable. And so PHP Storm adds this kind of one-line thing to say, hey, nav items is actually an array of a whole bunch of standard class objects. And then down here with our NI, it tells us exactly what's in our NI. It's just a little long. So instead of using that, what we're going to do is we're just going to use the built-in tools to kind of inspect this stuff a little better. So what I do is I click on the NI variable, and PHP Storm gives me this pop-up. I hit plus, and now it tells me all the things that are set. So now if we look, we're at home, and we've got a subdepth of 0. So that makes sense. We've also got a level of 1. So that's interesting and something to keep an eye on. So we're going to step through. Yeah, I just want to resume. So now what I've done is I told it, hey, continue going. And what happened is it continued through the for each, looped again, and then it saw the breakpoint again and stopped. So now we're on the second nav item, which is about. So what we expect to see here is same level, same subdepth. This stuff should all be the same until we get to a subpage. So I'm going to make this a little easier to track on while I'm developing. I'm going to click on my debugger tab down here, and I'm going to add a new watched variable. So down here, I'm going to say watch NI, and this is an object. So watch NI subdepth, and then also watch NI level. And maybe let's add one more, NI name. Cool. So now that we've added these 3 watchers, these things are going to update anytime my code takes a step forward. So if I hit play here, we'll see we're now at services. If I hit play again, we're at blog. Ooh, that's an interesting
-1. That's nice.
That's odd. But we're still at level 1. So let's see what happens when we get into one of our subpages. Okay, so we're at subdepth 0 and level 2. So I think what this is saying is, what this kind of demonstrates to me is that the subdepth is always 0 unless a navigation item has children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not exactly what we want. We want to have LIs for anything at level 1 and spans for anything past that. So cool, we got to the bottom of it. What we need to do is we need to use NI level. And then instead of equal to 0, we're going to set it equal to 1. Cool. So I should be able to, I'm going to tell PHP Storm to stop listening. I'm going to head back to my browser and tell it to stop debugging. Yeah, and you'll see that PHP FPM decided to kill the process after waiting for 30 seconds. So I'm going to disable my debug in my browser and refresh. So now I shouldn't trigger any more breakpoints.
It's quite slow, though.
I might still be broken up. Yep, I'm still broken over here. So what I need to do is I need to get out of presentation mode so that I can hit this stop button. So hopefully, get back to my browser now. There we go. Okay, so things look a little different. Let's see what the actual HTML looks like now. Okay, so up here, looking at services, we still have LIs. Down here, looking at blog, we've got div, we've got a span opening tag, but you'll notice, we've got an LI closing tag. So that ain't right. I think what we need to do here is, instead of closing this here, we just need to make sure that this echo closing tag is going to echo the tag name we've defined over here. And so we've got a lot of...
Could you put that in presentation mode so we can...
yes, thank you.
Nice.
Okay. So to restate, we've got this down here, this closing LI. This needs to match this tag name. So rather than just closing LI every time, we can just close LI dot tag name, or rather close the tag name rather than LI every time. Okay. So now that we've saved that, let's head back to the browser and see what we get. Okay. So now we've got post 1 is wrapped in a span, and it's got the closing span tag. And about is wrapped in LI, and it's got the closing LI tag. Sweet. Okay. So now all we need to do is apply the proper classes. You might have noticed when we were switching back and forth that this is step 2 of 2. And this is actually the second time we're looping over these nav items. The first time is above here. And you'll notice that down here, we're actually doing some class manipulation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this bit to set the classes that I need. So I'm going to head back to my browser. We're going to go to our static site, and we're going to see the actual code that needs to be set here. All right. So the first thing that I'm noticing is that this is wrapped in both a nav, and we might have that at our top level, and a div. So let's make sure that ours is also in both of those elements, because that's outside of our template. Okay, so we've got header, we've got the nav, and we've got the div. Okay, so we've got collapse, navbar, collapse, main menu item. They've got collapse, navbar, collapse, main menu item. Sweet. So we're doing okay on our wrappers. All we've got to do is we've got to adjust our items to match the classes here. So if we look at... let me highlight the same element in both things. We've just got to change this UL and everything underneath it to have the proper classes. So we've already done enough to change the actual tag name, but let's make sure that our subtags actually match what theirs do. So we've got our blog expanded. Let's expand their blog. Cool. Yeah, so this is about the same. They've got an LI for their blog top level. And then underneath that, they've got the same thing we have, an href and then a div that contains the sub items. So let's see what the actual sub items look like. No span, just A tags. So let's go back to ours. We actually need to remove our span. So let's figure that out. So what we did is we said, hey, if the tag name, or if the level is more than 1, give it the tag span. Otherwise, give it the tag li. What we're going to do instead is we're going to try to say whether or not we even need the wrapper in the first place. So instead of storing this tag name, let's make a new variable for this, and we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to say needs wrapper. Cool. So the first thing we got to do is we got to wrap our opening in that needs wrapper. So we'll say if needs wrapper, then echo the opening, and then the closing same way. If needs wrapper, echo the closing. Otherwise, don't do anything. Cool. So this should be enough to disable on our site the span wrapper. Let's find out. Why you do this? Okay. Yes. Sweet. So let's look at our stack here. It goes ul, li, div, a. So back to the example here, we got ul, li, div, a. Okay, cool. So we're getting there. We're almost getting there.
Nice.
So let's finish up these class names. So the first thing that I notice is that each and every item in their list of LIs has a class name.
Mm-hmm.
So they give everything nav item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in our classes loop down here, I'm going to say if ni level equals 1, then add this. Let's just add it without a name. Add this nav item class. Cool. So if we head back and refresh on our site, what we should see is that every LI now, hopefully, yeah, every LI now has this nav item class. Cool. The next thing that I notice is that they've got a different class on their UL wrapper class. So let's copy that and add that to ours. It's a little easier than doing it in a for each on this time, since it's just an echo. So we'll just do it right there. Head back and if I can figure out which gesture is right, head back and refresh on our site. Cool. Now our UL has that nav bar nav, and we can see there's quite a few changes up here. Still not looking quite right though.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that we're going to need to do is make sure that our actual drop-down stuff is given the right stuff. So you'll notice that on the LI of the element that contains the drop-down, on our static template, they've actually given it this drop-down value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to combine these two levels and subdepth. So, actually, it looks like we can use this has submenu instead. So let's just do that. That's a lot easier. If ni has submenu, then classes equals dropdown. Head back here. Oops, this is the static site. So refresh on our concrete5 site. And cool. So now our blog and our pages page have this drop-down class. All right. So a couple things left. We've got to add a class name to our actual drop-down wrapper. So let's see what that class name is. Drop-down menu. And it looks like there's class names on the items too, drop-down item. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if ni level equals 1, add nav item, else add this, where are we at? Hold on. Add this drop-down item class. Now, this isn't going to work quite right. And the reason why is because we're setting these classes to ni classes, and then we're applying those classes to our wrapper. But our drop-down items don't actually have a wrapper. So instead of doing that, let's just add that to a different value. So let's do this. Ni anchor classes equals implode anchor classes. We're actually going to initialize that. And we're going to use a new array because that's a pet peeve of mine. And so now, instead of applying this to classes, we're actually, we're going to apply it to the anchor classes. Cool. All right. So what this is doing is it's applying it's adding two properties to these objects. Now, this isn't necessarily the right way to do this kind of thing in PHP. When you have objects like this and you just kind of willy-nilly add properties to it, it's going to make it take up like an extra 20% of memory than it would otherwise if you had just used an object and declared it or just used an array. So if you're using these kinds of things, it's always better to use an array. This is just something that we aren't really able to update because it's got so much backwards compatibility and people relying on it. So with that said, and with our anchor classes added, we should be able to just come down here and say on our A's, we always want to add the anchor classes. Looks like we're adding the NI classes too. That might not be what we want. Let's remove that and have it just be, gosh, it's like I never do this.
Yeah.
Just add,
Anchor classes.
Yeah. And classes.
Get there eventually.
Sweet. Cool. All right. So let's see if that actually did anything that we want. It might have made things worse because we changed how the anchor gets its classes and stuff.
Nice.
Nice. So these are not showing anymore.
Oh, halfway there.
That was an interesting. Popped up when I hovered, didn't they? No. Weird,
no, I think
scrolling.
So they're stacked, but not the JavaScript might not be hiding them.
Yep, we're not quite there yet. We still need to add the class to our wrapper. So let's make sure that our actual anchors underneath our nav items have the right class. So we're going to go back to the static. I'm going to expand one of these. It looks like they have the class nav link. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add this to our anchor classes. So anchor classes equals nav link. Cool. So now I guess if I can figure out the right gesture to use, let's do the rest of this too. Let's add this drop down menu class to our wrapper. So that'll actually just go right here. Class equals drop down menu and save. So if we
I have a feeling this should work.
I believe in me too.
Nice.
Nice.
All right.
Cool. Sweet. And so just to kind of go over what we did here, the first thing that we did is we went to our sitemap and we added a bunch of pages to our site. We added the about page, the services page, and these blog pages, these pages, and a contact us page. All these things are just blank pages. They have our hello world rather template on them. They don't have the homepage template. But that's just to say that we are powering this AutoNav now out of our sitemap. So if we go to our sitemap, just if you're not familiar with this stuff, if we go to our sitemap now and we add a new blog post.
You increase the font a little bit there. Sitemap is really small. There you go.
So we add a new page under blog. We'll call it new blog post. We'll say it is Sue. Apparently we're doing new lines. Super interesting. Perfect. That'll be great for SEO. Cool. So now that we've added that to our sitemap, you'll notice that that new blog post is just automatically in our navigation. So we could have left it the way that we had it, where we had just a global area and we had copied in the HTML, and that was working fine. The only problem with that is that if we ever add pages that need to go into our navigation, we have to go and manually change that HTML block. So instead of having to manage just raw HTML, we can just power this stuff directly out of our sitemap now.
What's the performance cost on the AutoNav?
There is a little bit of cost. So one thing about the AutoNav, if we take a look at how this kind of works, you'll see the nav selected and nav path selected are applied here in the template in PHP. And so if we were to cache this navigation, somebody would come to your site, it would get cached having the active page maybe be the home page.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would view a different page, and then they might not see their different page highlighted as selected.
Right.
So for that reason, I believe the AutoNav disables full page caching.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using full page caching, and you definitely should be, you'll have to make considerations with, like, do we really need this to be powered out of our sitemap and changed instantaneously, or can this be something that's hard coded and changing kind of less often? So yeah, so what we can do, I guess, to kind of demonstrate that, let's go and enable caching on this site.
Do you have a general rule of thumb on sort of the size the site would have to be before this starts to become an issue? Are we talking tens of pages or hundreds or thousands or?
To me, it's a very organic thing. It's about your business requirements. I personally am crazy about performance, and anything that I do, like it really, it's like I can't help myself but to strive to make it as fast as I possibly can, even if that's not necessarily the business requirements or the goal of the project. So for me, I definitely try to pay attention to these things and make sure that my stuff is cacheable, unless I have a really good reason not to. So, one thing that we can do to avoid that, I don't think that if we look at this site, I don't think that there's no active page state for these.
Mm-hmm.
And so the caveat that I described of like, oh, well, you can't, if you go to the about page and the navigation's cached for that, you'll see the about highlighted.
Right.
This theme doesn't actually have that. So like we can just turn on full page caching, and we should just be able to, if we go to our home page, let's do it in a incognito window. We go to our home page. This should have been, ooh, this is interesting. Did we not publish that?
You got two there. That's weird.
Yeah, let's figure that out here real quick. I think we didn't publish the global area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that seems...
It's one of the two.
Logical explanation.
Oh, wait, what? My duplicate global areas are gone. That was weird. Yeah, so we had to publish the changes. So I just went back to the global area and hit publish.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be really nice if that would happen on page publish, or at least would give you some kind of heads up, like, oh, there's a global area that hasn't been published. But apparently we do not have that. So another thing for an issue if somebody is following along.
Little quality of life improvements that could be added.
Okay, so if we refresh here, what I noticed right off the bat is that this looks cached to me. This is rendering quite fast. And if we look at the network for this page, you'll see 0.76 milliseconds of rendering time.
That's incredibly fast.
Yeah, it's pretty dang fast. So this, I immediately know that this is being cached. But just to prove it, we can go to, this is so big, I can't expand this. So we can look at the response headers and look at the cache control header. So it says no cache private. So that is interesting. Here we go. So now it's got a max age. And so that tells us that full page caching has this whole page cached and is serving with a max age out of cache. And another thing that is kind of makes that obvious is that we've published this global area and we still have this old busted old nav. So let's go and show what happens when you have full page cache and something like this happens. We just got to head in and clear our cache. Now, depending on your settings, the page cache will roll out after like 10 minutes or so. But since we don't want to wait 10 minutes, we can just refresh or clear the cache here and see it goes away right away.
Nice.
Yeah, so all those caveats I was saying are moot. Looks like by default, the AutoNav does not stop you from full page caching. So, I don't see any issue with it, honestly. If you're not using full page caching and your sitemap contains thousands of items, don't use it. I think that'd be a good rule of thumb. But definitely strive to have full page caching wherever possible, because like we just showed, you get these 100 millisecond render times. You can get to Hello World really quickly. So cool.
I think that's kind of rare for a navigation bar, though, isn't it? They usually has some indication of what page you're currently on.
Yeah, totally. And what I was saying might not even be true anymore. Let's see if that's the case. So what we were saying is, shoot. Well, we'll have to change one of these page templates to not be Hello World. So let's do that really quick. We're going to tell
You're just going to set it to be the home page.
Yeah, exactly.
Page
just
type,
so that we can look at it without me having to get rid of my favorite Hello World. Okay. So now that that's changed, we might have to clear cache. Nope. Okay. So what I want to see here is I want to look at this element and see if it has that nav item selected. It does. It has nav path selected. So if I click on home, you'll see home has the nav path selected. So I think what I was describing was entirely wrong and not the case. I think I've just got some old knowledge. This seems to be working just fine with page cache. So I would definitely recommend using it.
So wait, just to make sure I understand what you said there. So full page caching is on, but it's not caching that class being added to the one that's selected.
Well, so I think what's happening here is the auto nav is being re-rendered per page cache, per cached page. Does that make sense?
Oh, I see. Yeah. That makes sense.
In the past, we have done where clients can't do full page caching. We have just wrapped this block in caching because it is, it's expensive to render, but if it's fully cached, there's no cost. So what we've done is we've just wrapped it using the expensive cache that's built into concrete5. And that works great. But that does definitely lead to the case where you've got some page marked as active and not actually active.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, that's all good to know. I think it sounds like you should be pretty safe to use the auto nav as long as you've got your caching set appropriately. I mean, even if you don't, as long as your sitemap's not thousands of pages.
Yeah.
Oops, we're going to want to turn off all these caching settings.
So when you add a new page to the sitemap, does that automatically trigger some sort of clear cache? Or is that something you'd have to manually do to get that to show up? Assuming you had the full page caching on here.
Adding a new page. So this is something that Evan was discussing yesterday with something we were looking at with a client. You can totally, for the new page, the new page isn't going to be in the cache. So as soon as you add the new page and navigate to it, it's going to generate the cache for that page, and that page will look great.
Right.
It'll have the new auto nav changes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the full page cached pages are going to have that change. So you're right that if you add a page, and so I mean, I guess we can maybe demonstrate that here. Turn full page caching back on.
There's no hook by default where if you have full page caching enabled and then you add a new page, it's going to clear it for you.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, because we do have a good idea of where these blocks are being used, and so we could kind of piecemeal clear the cache. So it's totally possible that we're doing it already, but I don't think we do. But let's actually try it and see.
Okay.
So we've got full page cache on, and I'm already saved that, so I didn't need to resave it. But we've got full page cache on, and we can prove that here by going to our network panel and seeing that our response header for our page gives us, gives us cache control headers. That's what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our sitemap, and we're going to add another blog post. Actually, let's just delete this. Cool. So we've removed a page. If we go back here, obviously that page is still there because we haven't refreshed. So let's try refreshing, and it's still there. If I go to services, it's not there because since I had disabled and re-enabled the cache, services didn't have its page rendered. If I go click back to home, it's still there. So the only way to remedy that is either to wait for the page cache to roll out, which, like I said, depending on what you have, actually it looks like the default
6
is
hours.
6 hours. So it'll be 6 hours till that rolls out to the rest of the site, or you can just go in and clear cache for the whole site. Since this site is really small and we're not doing anything fancy with the cache, like clearing cache is really cheap and easy to do if you actually run into these kinds of issues. So now that we've cleared cache, if we refresh, we'll see this. Hopefully we'll see this new blog post go away, and it does.
Nice.
Cool. So, all right, I'm going to turn off cache before I forget and get confused. Make sure the rest of these are off. Cool. Okay. Nice. So we've gotten the top nav working and matching what we have in our template. There's
Nice.
also
That's progress.
Yeah, definitely. There's also this this stack that we have hard coded here. I'm not going to touch that. I think that's okay. You know, it is a little confusing. It feels very not concrete5y to have to know just off the bat that this is a stack and that you can navigate to the dashboard page and change it. Definitely feels like it'd be preferred to have that editable. I'm just not worried about it.
Yeah, I think the thinking was just, evaluating the types of users that are going to be using the site and having someone, accidentally click on it. Whereas, having some authors who might accidentally click on it and change it without realizing they're doing it site-wide versus having an admin who kind of knows what they're doing, and still making it easy for them to change rather than having to, change it in the repo and do a whole push or something.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, so I think the next step here is to try to get some of this footer broken out. We've got some interesting stuff in the footer. Just to kind of go over, we've got a 4-column layout here, and it looks like they're all just equal column widths. Any kind of variation between equal and not equal looks like it might just be due to padding. We've got about us. This is looks like just plain content. And then underneath that, some kind of social links. And then we've got some contact information. Again, just content blocks. We've got some important link. We only have the one of them. But this looks like a page list. So we've got actually a list of pages here. And then lastly, we've got a newsletter with some content and a form field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by building out these columns, and we're just going to hard code these. We could use layouts. I just want to avoid using layouts because this theme is Bootstrap 4, and I don't think we have a Bootstrap 4 grid layout handy. So I'm not sure how well that will work. So instead, we're just going to hard code this to 4 columns. And if ever the client needs to say, oh, this needs to be 5 columns or only 3, we can deal with that, as we need to. So
seems reasonable.
Let's head into what we're going to want to do. So we're going to want to open up our footer.php. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate straight there in PHP Storm.
What's going on? Your mouse is jumping all over the place.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. It was hanging there for a second. So PHP Storm gives you this page right here. And I personally looked past this for years. I never thought I should look at what these blue things say. But once I did, I learned a lot, and using just these things have been really valuable for me. So for example, that command 1 opens up my sidebar here, which is a little cluttered. So I want to kind of avoid using this unless we absolutely have to. So instead, I'm going to use this search everywhere double shift hotkey. So I'm double tap shift. And so we've got this search everywhere. You've seen me pull this up to find the actions before, but we're actually going to use this to find the files we need to work on. So what we want to work on is footer.php, I believe. So we've got a footer tag. Yeah. And it looks like we've got our about us. Yeah, I think all this stuff can just be areas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that I like to do is I like to add kind of helper functions that will manage these new global areas things, just because I personally don't like using namespace stuff. So typically in concrete5, people will do, A equals, and this isn't going to be a global area, A equals area, and pass in C, or
Mm-hmm.
not even, A equals area, and then A display passing in C. I don't like doing this, or rather, this is new area. She'd think I'd never done this in my life. This totally will work. concrete5 manages aliasing this here, and my PHP Storm actually isn't aware of that. So maybe let's make that work here really quick.
That's why it's giving you that little warning that it's out of scope. Yeah.
Yeah, it's complaining about a couple things, but the first thing it's saying is it can't find the declaration.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting thing to show. Terminal. So what I can do is I can use the built-in concrete5 tool that generates a file that tells PHP Storm how to find this stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do /, where are we at? Oh. I'm going to do /vendor bin concrete5. And then after that, I'm going to run this IDE symbol command. I'm not sure exactly what it is, so I'm going to type IDE and hit enter, and you'll see, oh, hey, do you want to run this command instead? And I'll just say yes.
Nice.
Cool. So it generated a couple files that will make PHP Storm aware of some of the fake classes that concrete5 has. And this area class is one of these fake classes, where this area class doesn't actually do anything. It's just, all it does is it aliases this class that has a fully qualified namespace. So what I like to do is I like to add helper functions that give me the ability to just use this namespace without having to worry about colliding with other projects. But I'm not going to go quite so deep this time. Instead, we're going to just use the fully qualified name instead of these short names. So I'm going to do that by adding use statements up here. So we're going to say use area and save that. And this makes my personal values and feelings feel all happy and fluttery inside.
Everything is explicit.
Yep. So now we've got this area. We've just replaced this with an area with a blank name. So let's give it an actual name that makes sense. Single footer part is probably not right. Let's do, let's say footer leftmost. That's going to be a little unruly, but we'll go with it. Actually, we want this to be inside of our single footer part div. Oops. We're going to say left center, or let's say center left.
Center left, yes.
Just so everybody's happy. We'll do center right, and then lastly, and I'm going to regret getting rid of all this HTML in a second. We're going to have rightmost. Sweet. Oh, nice. And the date is already set up to be.
Whoa, it does it through JavaScript. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm now
using document write as well.
Yeah, it's an odd way to do it. And honestly, I'm a little surprised that works, but that's cool. So we don't have to worry about changing it. So our copyright will update. That's kind of already working. Cool. So all we've done is just delete all that business. We might want to match the paradigm that we did with the top logo for the bottom logo. So let's just do that. Let's open up header.php. And you'll see we've got this stack get by name. So we're going to do the same thing. Oops, if I can head back to our footer, we're going to do the exact same thing in here for our logo. So we're going to say let's not just do equals, let's do a PHP. Then we'll say stack equals stack. And again, we're going to actually import this. I'm not 100% sure what this extends, so let's click through. Looks like concrete core page stack. So I can get the right key combinations here. Cool. So a stack, and we're going to let it just import for us. Didn't do it, but we'll fix it in a second. We're going to say find, or what was it? Get by name. We're going to say footer logo, I believe. Let's head back to header and double check. Header logo, footer logo. Footer logo. And stack display.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? That doesn't look right.
I think there might have been a check, no? Just make sure it actually exists. Yeah. Been burned by that a few times.
Why am I doing this? So I need another really nice shortcut that I always forget to use is Command E. And that brings up like, oh, what was the last file you were looking at? So that is very helpful. We're going to say if stack display. Interestingly, I think the problem here is that this returns page instead of stack. So we're going to tell it that this is actually a stack. And then this display works properly. What's interesting is we don't pass in the C. I think that's because the way that stacks are set up, a stack is kind of a page in and of itself. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like an explanation I heard a while back. I think that's right.
Okay, so what we want to do is we want to replace, not with an alias, but we'll just call it stack. Cool. Nice. So now we've got our dependencies up top. We're not using any kind of these fancy classes that you have to have that IDE helper in order to understand. And we've got this footer logo stack. So when we go back to our browser and refresh, what we'll see immediately with this footer is this logo image is going to go away. And hopefully, do we still have page cache on?
Oh, I don't think you actually.
Oh, I was in my. No, I think
I don't think you actually deleted the image.
Right. Yeah. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Yeah. Dang. Shortcuts. All right. So now this image should go away and hopefully not be replaced by an error.
There you go.
And it does. So last thing we've got to do is we've got to actually figure out this stack. I don't like this.
Oh, we got a z-index issue there, huh?
Let's find out what we can do with that. Might be able to just throw a z-index value on one of these. Yeah, but that doesn't wrap.
Yeah, all we did to fix that was really simple. We just put some margin on the theme nav bar there, so we didn't actually look into making it robust.
Interesting. I don't know what the value on this would need to be.
10, 100 million, billion, infinity.
Have to see what this is set to. Gosh, so big.
It looked like 4 nines there.
999.
Yeah.
So presumably, if we change this toolbar wrapper to be more than that.
Yeah. Isn't it 5,000 by default or something like that?
Well, it doesn't look like that's working.
Huh.
So I think there's more to do on that. Let's see if setting that down would change it. Z-index is a little magic to me. There it is. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, is it just the important that's doing it? No. 9,000? Still above. 2,000? Still above. 999? Yeah, that works. Well, I am confused why that works. Maybe this dropdown is set to have a lower Z index. Yeah, that's what the issue is.
1200.
Yeah, so we can just change the search results value. And we can do that.
Wouldn't it be better to change the theme rather than changing the core values? Or
it could be, but I don't want to do that here because they might have other elements that are set to be above, 1200 and below 9999, and I don't want to. I'd like to leave that as pristine as we can until we have to poke at it, at least for now. But you don't have a bad point.
I'm just more willing to take a knife to it and start carving things out, reap the consequences.
And I mean, effectively, it's the same thing. Like we're going to go in and change the SAS here. So we're just let's just add a new file. We'll call it. Let's make sure we can actually build this first.
Just theme overrides or something.
No, that's not what I want. I want to open my terminal. It says is F12. Oh, it's Shift F12. Okay. So what we want to make sure is that we can actually compile. So we're going to say yarn dev. And it looks like it's doing something. We'll see what files it says it actually built. And that'll make me confident that we're doing the right thing here.
Yeah. It's pretty slow.
Yeah, when it works dev, it's working, just with nothing, like no cache or anything like that. If you have it on yarn watch, like the first build will be slow, and then every build past that will be fast. So we're going to leave that on. But this is definitely looks like it's working. So leave that on. What we're going to do is we're going to add a new file here. We're going to call it concrete5.scss. And I personally prefer SAS, but we'll just go with SCSS. So we're going to say, I forget what I might still have it copied, actually. I do. Okay. So we're going to say for this class name, set the Z index to 10,000.
That should work.
Should work. All we got to do is we got to update this to import concrete5, and the rebuild happened automatically.
Nice.
Okay. So now that we've done that, if we refresh here and we search, if we search for something no, not quite.
That's odd.
Let's do a hard refresh. Try it again. Yeah. And so now, no, still not.
Well, it started out though before you scrolled,
still
right?
got the index of 12. Here's the problem. It's an ID instead of a class name. So we're going to go back in here and just change that to match the proper thing.
Perfect. Did you get enough time to build?
Yes.
Okay.
Need a hard refresh. Still says 1200. Yeah. See,
you need an important on there, huh?
Yeah. We're not important enough. Yeah. So now our Z index is actually 10,000. Nice. Search here, and it's.
Well, now we've lost. Wait a minute.
It popped up when we started.
Okay.
Yeah, so we fixed that. So now we are faced with the struggle of remembering where we were at. We were adding the logo stack.
Right.
Let's head back to the stacks and global areas page. We're going to click through. It looks like actually stacks are default, so we don't have to click through anything. We're going to add a new stack, and we're going to call it footer logo. Okay. Well, what I want to do is I want to find out what this logo file is just so that we can footer logo. That makes it easy, just so we can upload it easily. Add a block. Desperately wait. An image. And we're going to upload that footer logo image. We're going to try our best to use PHP Storm to facilitate that. What's happening? Okay. Upload files. So we're going to go back to PHP Storm. We're going to head into image. We should just see footer logo here. So I'm going to start dragging that. I'm going to head back to my browser and I'm going to drop it. Nice. Sweet.
Nice.
The future is here. Oops. So we close that. We've uploaded it. Now we can select it. And publish.
Sweet.
Cool. So now that we've added that stack and we've updated our footer template to try to render that stack, we should hopefully see.
Did it? Yeah, it also had a bit of text there, right?
Did it?
That's not on the logo, is it?
No.
Oh, no. Okay, that is the logo.
Okay. So we have done most of what we need here. Oops. What we need to do now is we need to actually populate these areas. And honestly, the easiest thing is to just use an HTML block. But I'm going to do my best to use content blocks. Just so that when we hand this off to the pretend client, they have the ability to manage this. Okay, so the first thing we have here is some kind of header. I think it's an H4. Yeah, an H4, and then underneath that, a paragraph. So we can do both of those things just in content. So we're going to say contact us. Is that right? Did I? No, it's about us. Totally committed that to memory and immediately forgot. All right.
I think you can actually just copy it and, yeah, okay, you pasted it in there. I think it retains the styles and the
Will it?
The markup, doesn't it? If you just paste it in.
I believe it, but I'm an untrusting person. Let's see. Right. Okay. So we need these down here too. We can do that with the social links. Let's try what you're saying. Let's just paste it. Oops. There we go. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah,
Nice.
you're totally right. That's funny. We do have this link down here. So let's remove that and save. And we'll come back to those.
A hidden link?
No, it's these social links.
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been just like a orphan element, but I think it was just copying this first link down here. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So we're just going to do this with the social icons block, social links block. Add social links in the dashboard. No, don't take me from here, please. We'll do that. No. All right, we'll come back to that.
So you need to configure those first, and then they show up in the block.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay.
So we're going to move on to the next column, center left. Content. Nice. We're going to change that to be a pretend phone number, 555-111-1234.
That's mine.
And then, support at fakecompany.io. Sweet. And then we're going to add this one. And remember, this is going to be a page list. We don't have these pages added. So let's just add the top H4 for now and come back to that one as well.
Okay.
And we're definitely not going to worry about that form right now. Appear creeping seasons, Deva. Behold, bearing days open.
What does that mean?
You don't even know what that means?
Need some time to think about that one.
No, I think the difference in format that we're seeing here is just a difference in zoom level. Let's double check that. Yeah, looks like it. Cool. Okay, so let's get the social links. Let's try to get the social links and then these important links working, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay.
yeah, I think we've done pretty well getting this auto nav working and getting this footer done. It sets us up well for the next episode being making these internal pages.
Seriously.
Okay, so let's add some social links. We're going to choose one of these services. I'm going to just copy what they have, Facebook, Twitter, and then a regular link, and then Bay. Well, I don't know what this is.
Bay?
Bay. Bay.
Is it like LinkedIn for Brazil or something?
Something. Maybe something. We're just going to put sample URLs here. I'm going to try to. Let's see if we can get these things side by side. Seemed like that was something that you could do. Perfect. Cool. So now we can see them on the right-hand side and add them on the left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, we're going to go sample.com again. I'm going to say personal website for that one. And maybe we'll add a just something to match the amount that they have. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on our Instagram.
On our everything, man.
Oh no, our logo's stretched. Okay, nice. So now that we have that, let's get rid of this. We should be able to add those social links. I'm going to do the same thing we did before. This time it's not barking at us. Okay, so we can add these. We don't want them in this order. It's interesting that it chose this order. They had it Facebook, Twitter, personal website, and then that Bay, which we've just replaced with Instagram. Nice. So it adds those in there. It's not the best styling. Let's see if we can fix that just really quick with our SaaS stuff. So let's look at what this is mapping to. Single social icon. We're going to head back here, and we're just going to search for single social icon. Nothing. I'm going to do a better search now. We're going to limit it to SCSS. Still nothing. So let's head back and see if we can narrow down some of these styles. It does look like it has single social button in there. Or single social. Oh, no. That's not what that says. Single footer part social icon, LIA. There we go. So now we see these. There's the CSS files. We don't want that because that's a built file. We want one of these SCSS files. So we're going to head into the one that's actually in our project. Cool. So this is how we're actually applying these styles. So let's make sure that what we have can be applied. I didn't see the color, the text color being applied here. Wonder where that comes in.
You can use that little filter.
Yeah.
Color.
Well, it looks like it's just using what's on the anchor.
Oh, I see.
But we'll just see what ends up happening once we apply these appropriately. Okay, so we've got can't see it. We've got that there, and then we got this here. All right, so these are quite different. This has a wrapper div and then just an unordered list underneath with pretty standard setup. We've got a wrapper div, and actually it's not quite different. It looked more different to my eyes a second ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to change footer icon and social icon matches down here to match our whatever's on our wrapper div. So CCM block social links. So I'm just going to change both of these and see what effect that has. Hard refresh maybe. go.
There you go.
A
Yes.
little better, but still a little funky, not quite matching what they have. I'm not sure what we're doing to cause that. Maybe this is still...
Theirs is left justified, is that?
Well, list unstyled. Maybe.
Looks like ours are centered.
List unstyled, yeah. So this is how they're applying the fonts and colors on this list unstyled class. So let's do that on our list inline class. Also, this Sass file makes my heart weep. So I'm bleeding out.
I'll stop you. Oh, there you go.
It's a little closer, but still not quite
So
right.
it's much closer.
We've got the font color, but the sizing's way off.
Well, go to the same zoom level, I think.
Oh, you might be right. You might be right.
I think you're actually closer than you realize.
Well, we're just a little off.
Yeah, it's a little spacing issue there.
That looks close enough to my eyes. Let's just leave it as is for now.
Okay.
And maybe when we get to the last episode, we can circle back and maybe try to dial these in. But to me, I think that this would satisfy any manager that I would talk to. And if not, it's just a matter of tweaking these just a tiny bit more.
Yep. And just to satisfy curiosity for anyone who wants to know about the BE link, that's linked to Behance, which is an online platform owned by Adobe, which is used to showcase and discover creative work.
Neat.
I'm sure all the designers out there already know that.
That's how I don't know. I'm just not creative. All right. So we're going to add these important link pages. You'll recall that we had to set our AutoNav we had to set it to just display all pages. And so if we add these important links anywhere, we should expect them to show up in our AutoNav. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a container page for them, and I'm going to make it just at the top level. So I'm going to make a new page. We're going to call this page just straight up important links. And we're going to give it a plural just because we're going to have more than one.
Oh, you're not staying true to the theme.
I'm deviating from the spirit of the theme, but it's for a good cause. All right, so we're going to add some important links here. I'm going to try to copy, but I might try to go a little faster. If it starts taking a while, which it's looking like it's gonna.
We're only 30 minutes over.
So, cool. Added that page. I am about to have added another page. I've gotten really good at adding pages, apparently.
It's going to all be automated through the CLI, right?
It definitely can. The answer is yes. Just with how much effort is the question. Right. Shopping cart in our shop. Shopping cart. I believe my brain can hold two things in it. We'll see. Apparently not. Add page.
Our shop.
Oh man, I totally lost it. Our shop. Our shop. I'll do
you gotta get that checked, Corvin.
I don't think so good.
A little Alzheimer's creeping in there.
All right, so if we refresh here, I'm on my static site. If we go to the non-static site and refresh, what we'll see is that our AutoNav now contains these important links, and we don't want that. That ain't right. So what we're going to do is we're going to head back, and on our important links container page, I'm going to give it an attribute that tells it, hey, just never include this in nav. So if I save that and we head back to our home page, now our important links is gone.
Nice.
So it's out of our auto nav, but it's still in our site. What we can do now is we can add a new page list that just adds those or outputs them just in order. So we're going to say page list. And we're going to add it. Ooh, that's interesting. This theme has some kind of interesting JavaScript event stuff. That's apparently really slow.
Whoa. Using a Chromebook there? Or what?
Well, we're calculating blockchain. Okay. We're trying to make some Bitcoin while we work,
I see.
All right, we're going to show, I think, yeah, leaving that empty will show all. So we're going to show all page types. I don't care to filter that. We're going to show underneath a specific page beneath another page. Yeah, there we go. Choose important links. And we're going to add that. Cool. So just that easy. We've got those there. They're not quite the right style, though. We want them to be this gray with the hover text. So let's see what the actual style of this is. List unstyled with just LI and A. Ours is divs, div all the way down. So
I bet you can just add the class.
maybe, let's see. Just list unstyled. Could be. Let's just throw it on one of these. Not there. I think it'll want a UL for that, I'm sure. Well, so what we can do is we can just adjust these manually with our CSS. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to go back to, we've got this footer file here. So single footer part. And then under that, I'm going to skip past these media tags just so that I am following their paradigm a tiny bit. So we've added this. We're just going to give it the proper, if I can find the key combination to get back, give it the proper color. That's 7F, 7F, 7F. Color 7F, 7F, 7F. We'll save it and we'll head back. And let's see what that does. Nothing. We've got it on the A, so that's why. So let's do, instead of this, we'll do the A, and let's just throw an important on it just so that we can be sure that this is going to take.
I do that for every rule. Just throw it.
Cool. So
it's pretty close.
Not quite.
Is it bolder, or?
It is bolder. The important is ruining our hover. So let's do font way normal and remove that important and see what effect that has. Nice. So our color is still not working. Let's get that sorted.
You can increase the font a little bit there. It's
sure.
You got it huge on your console, but your developer tools.
So what I want to do, okay, so what I want to do is I want to have this toggle element state. So on hover, you can see it's red. What that allows me to do with these developer tools in my browser is see the actual styles that are applied to it. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to do the same thing. And hover, oops, and we're going to say color is that.
You need a semicolon at the end there?
I don't. It's SAS.
Oh, I see.
Cool. Oh, wait, no, this is the static site.
Works.
Let's try it again where we know it should work. And it's us doing it. Okay, cool. Okay, there we go.
I'm all over there.
Yep. Sweet. Cool. So we made a lot of headway. This episode, what did we do? We added some pages to our sitemap so that our site kind of matched what our static HTML had. We're not necessarily going to keep these pages in the future. It just made it simple to copy what they had for AutoNav. Then what we did is we replaced the HTML block that we had as a stand-in for our nav with an AutoNav. And we added a custom template for that AutoNav that would allow us to give it the styling that our static HTML has. And once we were happy with that, we moved on to the footer where we replaced the static HTML with 4 separate areas just in the scaffolding that the static theme provided. And then we added just straight content blocks, social blocks, and a page list block in here. We didn't even create templates. All we did is we did a little bit of CSS tweaking to make it look how we wanted it to look. But apparently all of that is an episode and then some. So I think next week next episode rather, we'll definitely be able to make a ton of headway on those internal pages. And with most of this banged out, the header and the footer, I think we're sitting pretty to make a lot of headway next episode. So I'm happy with where we're at.
Nice. I am too. I feel like we're making a lot of progress and learning a lot of interesting stuff. There was one comment that came through privately from Mike Esparza that mentioned he had to leave early, but he was happy to learn more about the AutoNav and the intricacies and setup of that. So thanks very much. Don't see any other questions coming through. So if there's anything anyone wants to ask, this is probably your last chance.
Last call. You ain't got to go home, but you got to ask questions.
Yeah. I'll just give you a little bit of time to type something by mentioning that our next episode should be on August 8th. Does that seem right to you?
Man,
I feel like there was some...
I can't even remember things from one tab to the next, and you're asking me to
Yeah.
calendar here.
Well, that's what the calendar says. I feel like there was something going on at that time that we were going to have to move it for a week. No? I'm not seeing anything in my calendar.
I am out that time.
Okay.
So
oh yeah, okay.
That'd make sense. Yeah, I'm going to DEF CON, so
Nice.
that'll be where I'm at. If you guys want concrete5, yeah, or just hacked things. If you guys want some training, yeah, find me at DEF CON. I'll be one of the millions, and
see how to hack into concrete5. All right. Well, I think we can probably still do an episode on that day. Probably rope Evan into it, and we can try to make some headway on a block or two, or clean up some of the remaining CSS small issues and stuff. Yeah, let's go ahead and plan August 8th, since that's the normal schedule. And,
sounds good.
We'll put up a blog post ASAP and then update if anything changes. And I don't see any other questions coming in, so I think we're going to wrap it up and call it an episode. So thanks very much for your help today, Corvin.
Yeah, thank you for your guidance and your questions, keeping me honest and keeping me big text.
That's the hard part, yeah. All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for joining in, and we'll see you August 8th.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.